Coming back to our educational project dedicated to the GDP, or the gross domestic product, and before going into the second part, it is worth mentioning that the GDP, or the gross domestic product, represents the total value of goods and services an economy is producing. Now, that being said, and explaining a bit why it is important for monetary policy, for central bankers to set the interest rate and so on and so forth, I would like to make a reference to what the GDP really stands for, because in most of the cases it is being released on a quarterly basis. So it comes on a quarterly basis. Released on a quarterly basis. Well, that says a lot, because, for example, you may have for the first quarter let's say that we have growth in the United States for the first quarter, something like 1.5%. And then for the second quarter, for example, it will come at 3%, indicating strong growth for whatever the reason. Let's say it comes 3% for the second quarter, like this. And then the third quarter, due to due to a summer that was unexpectedly bringing something new, then we'll have a -1% on the GDP. And then on the last quarter, basically on the fourth quarter, if due to weather, due to heavy snow, due to whatever the reason, for the fourth quarter, we will have -2.3%. So the overall growth of the US economy, as represented by the GDP, would be the sum of all these four quarters. Basically 1.5 plus 3, you'll have 4.5, less 1 is 3.5, less times 0.3, you will have 1.2 with a plus. So basically the growth, the overall growth, will be 1.2% on a yearly basis. And you will hear that, for example, now that we are in 2015, let's assume that this is going to be the case, and you will see in 2016, or at the end of 2015, or in 2016, when the GDP for the last quarter in 2015 is going to be released, you will hear something like the US economy grew with 1.2%. That's an important fact to mention as well. If you go on the releases, you will see that the GDP comes with some different releases. This one, for example, in the United States, it is being called advanced GDP. In the UK, for example, it should be still in here, it is being called the preliminary GDP. These are the most important ones, not the final, because rarely the final will differ from the advanced or the preliminary, and if it is going to differ, it will differ only in something like 0.01, not that important. So when the GDP is released, you look at the preliminary, not the secondary, you look at the advanced, not the finally. Of course, unless finally or the actual outcome is differing really much when compared with the preliminary. If you want, you may go, of course, on this Forex Factory and look at the whole set of data that you have for the GDP. For example, this is the GDP in Canada, and it was released on Friday, October the 30th, and the outcome was 0.1% on a forecast of 0.1%, and the previous was 0.3%. So the GDP in Canada, basically, when compared with from the previous quarter to this one, shrank to 0.2. Now this is no good news for Bank of Canada that is going to meet, and when they are going to analyze the state of the economy, they are going to see that during a 3-month period the economy actually shrank when compared with the previous period, and this should be taken into consideration. As well, comparisons are being made between the actual GDP on the third quarter with the previous GDP on still on the third quarter, but from the previous year, as it may be that a cyclical economy will always have a smaller growth, or will suffer in a specific quarter on a cyclical basis, and maybe that will be expected. Anyways, it is to be taken into consideration. That's pretty much what you need to know about the GDP in terms of trading. You go on the economic calendar and check out when the release is going to hit the wires, what it really means, and when the central bankers are going to meet in order to assess that decision. Thank you and have a great day. Bye bye.